You ever have one of those days where the universe just says, "Buckle up, buddy"? Yeah, that was me. 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday morning. I was at home, sipping stale coffee, elbows deep in blueprints, wearing the same t-shirt I'd slept in. I'm Marcus Lyle, freelance architect, part-time homebody. Full-time guy who thought living in a quiet neighborhood meant peace of mind. Spoiler alert, it didn't. So my wife, Lauren, who, by the way, had just started her new job as county police chief, had left early for a meeting with the mayor. I was enjoying the rare silence when I heard the doorbell. Not a normal, patient ring. No. This was aggressive. Like someone pounding the buzzer on Family Feud after a wrong answer. I checked the peephole. And there she is. Vivian Parks, our HOA president. But around here, people just call her Madam HOA. Power-suited, hair sprayed within an inch of its life, lips pursed like she just smelled bad manners. And standing behind her? A guy holding a toolbox. A locksmith. That should have been my first clue this wasn't your average neighborhood chat. I opened the door, but just a crack, with the chain still on. "Morning, Ms. Parks. Something I can help you with?" She straightened like she was about to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. "Mr. Lyle, I'm here on official HOA business. We've documented serious property violations that require immediate inspection." She flipped open this binder that looked like it had eaten 3 other binders. She started listing off accusations like she was reading from a script. Unpermitted structural changes. Hazardous storage. Zoning infringements per Section 48C of revised bylaws. Now, I designed half the homes in this neighborhood, including mine. There is no Section 48C. She made it up. I said, as calmly as I could, "Vivian, we haven't changed a thing on this property. And if we had, I'd know whether it required a permit. Because again, I'm the architect." She narrowed her eyes like I'd insulted her personally. "Your wife hasn't responded to our notices. She's been ignoring HOA communication for weeks. That is not how responsible members of this community behave." Then she turned to the locksmith and said, "Proceed. Begin with the front door." The poor guy looked like he wanted to evaporate. Ma'am, I really can't do this without a court order. This paperwork doesn't even look legal." Vivian spun on him, voice rising. "I'm the duly elected authority here. If you won't assist, I'll call the police and report obstruction of an official inspection." Now at this point, I could have lost it, but I didn't. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Go ahead. Call the cops. But you're not coming into my house without a warrant. And you," I pointed to the locksmith, "you should probably leave now before you become part of something really stupid." He didn't need convincing. He packed up and hightailed it out. But Vivian? Oh no. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and immediately dialed 911. "This is Vivian Parks, HOA president of Farage Estates," she began, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "I am being threatened while trying to perform legally mandated safety inspections." And that's when I realized this was not about violations. This was about control. 20 minutes later, 2 squad cars showed up. Young officers, looked barely old enough to rent a car. Vivian rushes up like she's been waiting all her life for this moment. "Officers, thank God." He was hostile, aggressive. He's hiding something. I just know it. I stepped outside and gave them my ID, told them what happened. But before they could even respond, our neighbor from across the street, Mrs. Marion Duncan, walked up. 72 years old, sharp as a tack, been living here longer than the pavement. She raised one eyebrow and said, "Officers, I watched the whole thing from my window. I have video if you want it. That woman," she said, pointing at Vivian, "has been pulling this stunt on multiple families, trying to bully her way into homes." Vivian's face went from smug to crimson. "This is official business. You don't know what you're talking about." But Marion wasn't done. "I've been a licensed architect longer than he's been alive. And I know the HOA charter by heart. There is no authority for what you're trying to pull." That's when we heard the car door slam. Lauren, my wife, was back. In uniform, badge glinting. The effect was immediate. The 2 officers straightened up like schoolboys in a surprise inspection. "Officers," she said, calm as a lake. "What's going on here?" The younger one cleared his throat. "We received a report of obstruction of HOA authority and potential domestic conflict." Lauren turned to Vivian and said, "You want to tell me exactly what gave you the idea you could force entry into my house without a warrant or legal order?" Vivian blinked. "You're his wife?" "That's right. chief of county police, and also the legal co-owner of this property. Vivian tried to regroup. This is a conflict of interest. I demand you recuse yourself and call in outside officers. Lauren nodded slowly. You can file any complaints you'd like. Meanwhile, these officers are free to leave. There's no crime here, just a very confused HOA president who doesn't know her own limits. Vivian tried one last Hail Mary, pulled out her phone, and started live streaming. I am being intimidated by a corrupt police official protecting her husband from legal consequences. This is how corruption starts, people. But what she didn't know, Marion had already uploaded her video, the full, uncut version. Vivian trying to force entry, yelling at the locksmith, threatening me. It was already going viral in our local Facebook group by the time Vivian finished her little monologue. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. That night, Marion called us over. She had something to show us. Her dining table was covered in maps, property surveys, and public records going back 20 years. I started digging, she said. After she pulled the same stunt with the Johnsons last month. What I found is disturbing. Turns out, property lines in our neighborhood had been modified in HOA records quietly over years. Little shifts here and there, all of them favoring Vivian or her associates. Marion had the receipts, documents showing how Vivian held secret HOA meetings, posted notices in places nobody would find them, changed zoning designations, and reassigned common green space to private ownership. But here's where it gets nasty. The homes Vivian forced people to sell? Always sold to the same company, Glenmere Developments LLC. Who owns that LLC? Her ex-husband, who flips the homes for double and disappears. Lauren leaned over the table, eyes narrowing. This isn't HOA mismanagement. This is fraud. Marion nodded. I called a contact at the FBI. They've been investigating Glenmere for interstate property fraud. Looks like Vivian's been one of their boots on the ground. And then, like clockwork, we hear it. 3 sharp knocks on the door. We peek out, and there's Vivian. But this time, she's not alone. 2 men in dark suits. One of them holding a thin briefcase. She doesn't yell, doesn't threaten, just smiles and says, "We need to talk." Now listen, I've seen a lot in life. But there's something deeply unsettling about someone who goes from hysterical HOA president to calm criminal emissary overnight. They sat in Marion's living room, tried to gaslight us, said we were trespassing in records we shouldn't have accessed, said we were harassing legitimate businesses, threatened civil litigation if we didn't back off. But Marion? She looked Vivian dead in the eye and said, I built this neighborhood, sweetheart, and I'm not going to let you tear it apart. Vivian snapped. You don't understand what I'm risking. These people, they own me. If I don't deliver, they'll come for me too. The next 48 hours were chaos. FBI agents. Safe houses. Lauren put on administrative leave. Our phones tapped. Vivian disappeared. Vanished into thin air. We thought it was over, but then we got the call. Derek Parks, Vivian's estranged son. He'd been feeding information to the FBI for 6 months. Said he had recordings. Evidence. Proof that his mother wasn't just a pawn. She was a willing architect of the fraud. And worse, he believed she'd been behind his father's death, made to look like an accident to secure insurance money and silence a whistleblower. We met him at a diner. And what he showed us was beyond anything I'd imagined. Audio files of Vivian authorizing harassment, fraud, and, permanent solutions for anyone who pushed back too hard. That's when the SUVs pulled into the diner parking lot. And for a second, I thought we were dead. But no, it was the FBI. They'd faked the death of their lead agent to catch the leak inside the bureau. They stormed in, arrested Vivian. Derek's evidence sealed the deal. Her whole operation collapsed in a single night. 43 arrests, $12 million in fraudulent transfers recovered, and 17 neighborhoods freed from her grip. The trial? That was a moment I'll never forget. Watching her stand there, jaw clenched, as each charge was read. Fraud, racketeering, first-degree murder, life in prison, no parole. And as they led her away, Derek just whispered, she used to tuck me in at night. It's been a year now. Lauren's back on duty. Marion's a local legend. And me? I'm back to designing houses. But I still flinch when the doorbell rings. Now I gotta ask you, if your HOA president showed up with a locksmith and fake documents, would you have stood your ground? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your take, because these things don't just happen in my neighborhood. They could happen anywhere. Even yours.